everybody, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to talk about Dodge CEO Matt McAlear and his recent interview with the Automotive publication online here called The Drive. He actually did a very interesting interview with them. They kind of questioned him about the possibility of a V8 returning to the new Charger, and what he said kind of was very interesting because him being an automotive CEO, they usually give the same kind of responses. They don't talk about future product and stuff. So we didn't get a defined answer, but we did get a very open-ended answer. And some of the quotes were very interesting to me because if you go back and follow what I've said on this channel multiple times, what Matt said goes right in line with what I've been saying about the new Charger. We're not going to get a Hemi anytime soon. This new Dodge Charger, this LB is what they call it, the LB Charger. Was designed to be basically an electric car and accommodate the new inline sixes. I've talked to people at Windsor. I've talked to people on some of the engineers and stuff, and they've basically said, hey, the Hemi was never designed, or this car was never designed to carry a Hemi engine. Basically, the strut towers are too inboard for the Hemi's width. The firewall would have to be moved. The engine cradle would have to be completely redone. And the front of the car would have to be redesigned because it would have to accommodate, a bigger radiator and stuff like that. So it's very interesting to hear Matt's comments because they kind of go along with what I've been saying about, it's going to be a long time if they do to come up with a V8 option. He kind of left it, very open. He kind of hinted at the past. I will kind of go into some comments before I read the quotes because there's some stuff I want you to kind of go along with me and kind of understand what I'm saying. But the first quote we're going to talk about it's a very open-ended quote, and again, keep in mind that the new Charger is based on the Stellantis large architecture, and that's a multi-energy platform. Now, if you're not sure what a multi-energy platform is, basically what that means is Stellantis Large can accommodate internal combustion. It can incorporate hybrid, whether it be plug-in or just normal hybrid. And it can also incorporate basically electric, which we know because we got the Charger Daytona already in dealers. So with that being said, the outgoing car, the last generation car, which we'll call LX because that's what it originally started as, the LX, but then as the cars got more redefined, each model got its own designation. So like Charger was Challenger was LA, Charger was LD, Chrysler 300 was LX. So I'm just going to call it the LX platform. But the LX platform, a lot of people complained about that car mainly because if you look at what that platform was designed from, it was basically a late 1990s Mercedes E-Class. And a lot of people go, oh, it's just an old, outdated E-Class platform. Well, they're kind of right and they're kind of wrong because you think about it, Dodge and Chrysler had that platform in production for 20 years. And if you look at basically we got the 300 and the Magnum in 2024 as a 2025. And then in 2025, we got the Charger as a 2026. And then in mid-2008, they dropped the Magnum to get the new Challenger. So throughout the years, everything's been updated. And the cars that started out in 2025 are a lot different than the cars that we got from 2023. We've first seen a huge suspension change back in 2011 with the Challenger. The cars got negative camber. Suspensions were completely redone. The Challenger was so much updated that it actually went from being having one designation to the LA designation. So that was pretty interesting. It actually got a whole new platform code, and the Charger and that basically got an all new floor pan and all new suspension for 2011. We looked at all those cars and they got completely revamped. And then as time went on, they got, the new SRT suspensions, and the higher models ones were, we had 3-mode adaptive suspension and all this stuff. So the even in 2011, some of the cars grew like, 0.2 of an inch in wheelbase. and stuff like that. So the platforms are, yeah, they're kind of the same, but they're very different. So with 20 years, what I'm trying to say is with 20 years, those cars, had a lot of development in them. So we've seen stuff like multiple engines, and we've seen all types of crazy stuff. You think about it, in 2005, the lowest horsepower engine we got in that car was 250 horsepower from a 3.5 liter high output V6. Then we look at 2023, with the most horsepower we ever got with that car was a 1025 horsepower, Demon 170, the C170 Elephant engine. So there's a huge drastic difference in the performance characteristics of that platform. But what Matt had to say was very interesting. So he says this. He goes, if you look back across the last generation, you go through these engines between the Charger and the Challenger and the Magnum. We started out with a 3.5 liter V6, a 6.1 V8, then had a 3.6 V6, 5.7 V8, 6.4, basically a 6.4 liter, 6.2 liter, 6.2 liter Demon, 6.2 liter Red Eye, 6.2 liter Demon 170. He goes, do you know how many different powertrains, rear-wheel drive and all-wheel drive, we had on those engines? This is a multi-energy platform that can accommodate all of that. This is just the first year, and we're going to have 4 powertrains that outperform everyone that they're replacing with standard all-wheel drive. We're just getting started. We're going to have a lot of fun. So basically, he's going through all the engines that the last generation had, and I don't know if he's kind of hinting that this seems to be dragged out for 20 years or what. But the interesting thing is, he says, we just started out, we got 4 platforms or powertrains that are going to outperform everyone that they're replacing. So we look at, now the designations are kind of confusing, but if we look at what he's talking about, we got keep in mind 2024 and 2025, the Dodge Charger so far, and I'm talking in February of 2025, nothing's changed, okay? So we still have the 2-door. It is, the RT with the Stage 1 package and the Scat Pack with Stage 2. If we look at what he was talking about, the Dodge Charger RT Stage 1 has 496 horsepower. So when you pin that against realistically, if you pin that against a RT 5.7 car with 370 horsepower, obviously that car is going to outperform it. It's got way more horsepower. It's got 120 more horsepower than the outgoing car, okay? Even if it's electric. And it's got standard all-wheel drive. We look at the Scat Pack models, okay? The outgoing Scat Pack had 485 horsepower with the Hemi. The new one has 670 with the Stage 2 package in drag mode. And then it has standard all-wheel drive. So if you look at the performance numbers, really the Scat Pack Stage 2 is basically on par with the 707 horsepower Hellcat. If you look at the performance numbers, they're almost identical to the Grand Cherokee Trackhawk with all-wheel drive. So realistically, I wouldn't even say that the Scat Pack Stage 2 is even close to the 6.4. I would say more or less it's basically a competitor of what the 6.2 supercharged Hellcat engine was. So, but the other 2 powertrains he's talking about is the new 6-pack models that are coming this summer. And we are getting a 420 horsepower sedan, and we're getting a 550 horsepower coupe. So those are ultimately the direct competitors of what the outgoing Charger RT and Charger Scat Pack are. So you basically look at the 485 to 550, and you look at the 370 to that 420 horsepower. So if they would have just kept the RT and Scat Pack names to the ICE models, the internal combustion models, it would have made a lot more sense. But because they threw them on EVs for some stupid reason, it's very confusing to people. And also, I've also been talking. I get a lot of people that message me, what's Dodge gonna do, in the future with, I want a sedan, but I want 550 horsepower. They're only going to offer a 420 horsepower version. Well, I've gotten, like I said, a lot of emails between people back and forth, and from what I hear, and nothing's official, but from what I hear from people, is Dodge is looking at doing a very similar thing to what they did with the last generation Charger. So if we use 2020 as a good example, in 2020 they introduced the Hellcat wide body. Okay, for that year we got compared to the 2019 car, we got the wide body kit, but we also got a boost of 10 horsepower for 717. The very next year in 2021, we were introduced to the Hellcat Red Eye wide body, so we got 797. 2022, we got the Red Eye Jailbreak, right? So we got 10 more horsepower, so it was 807, and you can pick whatever option you wanted. And then the very next year after that, we got the Hellcat Jailbreak. So basically, we didn't get any more horsepower, but we got a car that we could configure whatever we wanted. So that's the kind of stuff Dodge is going to do with these new cars. They're going to constantly introduce new models. We've heard, at the end of 2025, we're going to get a cheaper electric model. It's going to be rear-wheel drive only, so only one EDM. So right off the bat, it should have the same battery pack from what we heard, but it's going to be rear-wheel drive only, and it's going to have around 300 horsepower, because keep in mind that these all-wheel drive cars, they have, the electric ones have two, EDMs on them, electric drive motors. So with one EDM, it shouldn't be a huge drastic change in weight, but it should cut down the cost on those cars a lot. So and maybe we'll even see more range. We don't know. But the GT is coming. So he says right here, he goes, we're going to have a lot of fun. We're just getting started. So expect Dodge, even though they might roll out, the 420 horsepower sedan this year, and not offer the 550 horsepower on the sedan, maybe, in 2026 sometime, they're going to offer that. So keep that in mind. He also goes back to say, now mind you, Carlos Tavares wanted to end the Hemi production. And the reason why is because he didn't want to pay emissions credits. A lot of people complained that, why is this Dodge EV, been pushed on us, and it's been failing because, it's constantly having issues. Why is this here and not an internal combustion car? And now they're racing to put the internal combustion car in effect. And I've said this in another video, but the honest to God's truth is, from what I've been told, is that basically Carlos Tavares said, hey, we're not paying for emissions credits. So all that stuff from 2023, all the, Demon 170 stuff, all the last call stuff, that was supposed to be paid with what they were going to make off of these cars. So they weren't going to be penalized, and they were getting kickbacks from the U.S. government and the Canadian government to build EVs. So they were going to spend that money on the last call cars from 2023. However, because these things were pushed back so long, and they didn't arrive in dealerships until a certain amount of time, they didn't get the huge amount of money that they had. So now it's a rush to get internal combustion cars because they want to start selling stuff, because these cars are losing money. So keep that in mind. But what Matt says here was very interesting. They basically asked him, about a V8 return. And he said, we haven't disclosed that yet. He goes, but one of the things that's encouraging is what with the change in leadership, meaning Carlos Tavares, he said V8s are no longer a bad word around the company. But with anything, we still have to be compliant. So Mopar Insiders, my cohort Jared Belfort, broke the news that the 5.7 Hemi, it was going to be their tooling and stuff. They had already quit building it down in Saltillo, Mexico. They're sending the tooling up here to Michigan, and they're going to build a very limited production for the Dodge Durango for its final production year, and they're going to build basically Ram 1500s with the Hemi engine. Now, a lot of people go, well, why can't you shove that into this car? And that's exactly what I said before. They would need to spend lots of money, like hundreds of millions of dollars, to revamp this car for that Hemi to fit. So it was very interesting that he said, hey, we still have to be compliant, but V8s are no longer a bad word around the company. Now, just because the 5.7's coming up here to Michigan doesn't mean that it's going to be in the Charger. I'm sorry to say that, but that's what we've heard. Another thing we've talked about, and I highlighted this in the article. I said, even if Dodge were to greenlight a V8 powered Charger today, it wouldn't hit the market overnight. Developing a new powertrain reintroducing an existing one, it requires extensive engineering, testing, and emissions compliance. So what Matt had to say about that, like again, I've been saying it for a while. He said something very, very interesting. He goes, "You can't just turn something on that wasn't there before. Even if we were to say we wanted to do it today." He goes, "Pick an engine, a V10, a four-cylinder. It's a year and a half, 2-year development cycle, right?" Which is true. If we look at the Fiat 500e, okay, great example. In the summer, they announced that they were spending $100 million, and mind you, the platform that's built on is a multi-energy platform, even though it's strictly an EV. That they were spending $100 million to revamp that car to make it into a hybrid as well. Now, the interesting part about that, and why I'm bringing up the 500, is because that car was released in 2020. It was very successful at the beginning. It took all these awards and was selling really good in different states, in different countries around the EU. The problem is there's a big pushback against electric vehicles in the EU right now because they cost too much. And the sales have gotten so bad for the Fiat 500 that they basically have fallen off a cliff. And even though they introduced it to the US, it's not selling well here either. That the plant that is built in Italy has shut down production for almost 4 months last year, and they were idle at the beginning of this year. So, yeah, it's not selling well at all, and they have to do something. Now, with that $100 million, it's not like overnight they can put that model into production. So what they have to do is they have an engine already. They have the 1 liter hybrid engine. Like it's a 3-cylinder hybrid that they're putting into it. I heard, but the hybrid model won't make it to market until late 2026 as a 2027. So that's 2 years. And mind you, again, you have to go through like design phase. You have to go through the engineering phase. I mean, testing, all that stuff. Getting it registered to meet compliance. There's a lot of work into that. And you're talking like that was just $100 million. And that's a small car that they're not going to sell much. This Charger would probably require a couple $100 million to revamp. So that was very interesting to me. The other thing we talked about, Trump. Okay, so Trump's now in office. He's been cutting back emissions regulations. He's been cutting back everything, all these compliances and stuff. The problem with Trump in the Oval Office right now is he's only going to be there for 4 years. So, I mean, basically he's erasing the Green New Deal. But you got to remember there's CARB states still. So, like California obviously is way left. And they control the California Air Resources Board, and there's multiple states that follow them. Pennsylvania, Oregon, Washington, Colorado, all those states follow CARB. So we're seeing huge things that CARB is pushing still for 2032. Like they don't want to have any internal combustion engines in California sold after 2032. It doesn't matter if it's a lawn tractor, a generator, or anything. Nope, can't have it. They're already talking about pushing back. If you own a classic car, you can only drive it so much a year. They're limiting people on doing that. So it's gone like drastically different than what it was even just a few years ago. But there's a reason why there's a Charger Daytona. I mean, this is the kind of market that an EV would need to be in, because if you're not going to produce anything after 2032 that's internal combustion, you need electric vehicles. And that's where this new Charger is really going to play a huge role in. So, I mean, you got, I think, 11 states that are CARB states? So, yeah, I mean, there's a reason why the Charger Daytona is here. But you also have to worry about the future administration. So, it'd be different, I think, if Trump was going to be, in there for 8 years, possibly, if there was a chance of him winning again. But because we know he's a lame duck president, he's only going to be there for 4. You can't throw all your eggs into one basket and hope that, a Republican president wins and is still as reluctant at putting in, emission standards as him. So what Matt says was, we still have to find ways to keep engines compliant. And just because there's a change in administration right now, that's only a 4-year deal, right? So you have to be careful and balance it across the entire portfolio in the long run. So you can see why Dodge is playing very conservative to this. You can't just go spend the money and throw an outdated Hemi engine into this car that was never designed for it. You're going to be pouring money into something that um, doesn't make a lot of sense when in 4 years, by the time you roll it out, let's say it's 2 years, maybe 2.5, you only have like a year and a half, maybe two to actually sell it before, let's say, something happens where we get a liberal president who's pro Green New Deal, and says, hey, we're cutting back on all this stuff. We're going to go full EV again. So that's what Dodge is really kind of like worried about. But he made another interesting comment. He goes, you don't always have to spend the money if you don't have to. And he said, there are thousands of suppliers, right? And then you have emissions regulations that you always have to keep an update for your engines for. And then typically that's done year to year, because anytime you have an update for emissions, it's just more money you have to put into it. So that's true. We've seen that with the 5.7. That's why they put the e-torque system on it for the Rams, because they sold so many of them. But yeah, I mean, you got to balance that out across the portfolio. So I understand what he's saying about that. I've been talking about it for a long time. But Matt also went on to say some very interesting things too about, basically the V8 kind of deal. And, a lot of people are like, I don't know, just a lot of people are just basically upset because there's no V8, including myself. I mean, this car looks really good. It needs a V8. But Matt had something very interesting to say too about all this. He said, the only thing I can say is that if history can tell us something about the future, or anything about the future, with all those powertrains that I listed off, meaning earlier with the 6.4 and all that stuff, he goes, we're always looking to find the best in class performance, to build on performance and to push the boundaries. We don't want to stand still at Dodge, and we don't plan on it. There will be a powertrain variations that continue to come. He basically said we haven't even launched the SRT yet, so meaning the Banshee, right? So we still have to get into that, and who knows where we're going to go if there's a business case that makes sense for a V8 and there's potential. Like I said, hopefully something small displacement going forward, but they're going to have to build an all new engine to adapt into this car. Now, they'll still have to change the car around a little bit, but we probably won't see that until a mid-cycle refresh, maybe. And that would have to be around 2028. So, I mean, the lifespan of these cars are usually 7 to 8 years for for one generation, where it gets an update halfway through. So, realistically, we're looking at 2028. So, I doubt, even if they do build a new generation of Hemi, we ain't going to see it for a while, at least a few years. So, keep that in mind. I mean, I keep seeing people saying, oh, the Hemi's coming, the Hemi's coming. It's not coming anytime soon, people. I hate to burst your bubble, but, if we look at the new inline sixes, I'm telling you, I drove the new Dodge Charger Daytona. I was really impressed with the driving characteristics of it, and it made me really excited about the inline six. We've seen some really impressive stuff with the inline six in the last few weeks. They're inline sixes in Ram pickups that are running like almost 8-second quarter mile times. And I'm not even talking about a newer truck. I'm talking about like a D150, like 1990 D150 that's running almost 8s. So, I mean, there's a lot of potential in the inline six. I think a lot of people will be shocked. We've heard Dodge has been working for a while on a 750 horsepower version of the Hurricane, which will be really cool. So there's other things in the lineup, but yeah, if you're looking for that hardcore V8, which I absolutely love V8s, don't get me wrong, it's not going to happen anytime soon. So make sure to check back at Mopar Insiders Daily. We usually have 3 to 4 articles a day. Make sure to hit subscribe if you like this video, and hit the like button. It helps me out to get the message across. And I'll see you in the next video. Bye.